An older brother lives alone with his sick sister. Because his sister is seriously ill and has to be operated on, the older brother has to fight not only for his life but also for the safety of his younger brother. The inspirational film that I will tell this time is entitled Nice View. A film from China. The story begins with a man named Jinggu. He is the brother of a younger sister named Jingtong who is still 6 years old. In this rented house they only live alone. Every day he has to take care of Jingtong and take her to school. On that day after taking his sister, Jinggu went to a specialist who treated his sister's illness. It was told here that Jingtong, who was only 6 years old, had a heart defect, so he often had shortness of breath when the air pressure is low. Jingtong disease is a hereditary disease. When they were young their mother was also hospitalized, later dying of the same disease. Jinggu, who was still a teenager at that time, had to be the breadwinner of the family and had to fight for Jingtong, while his father prefers to leave them. The doctor said that Jingtong's condition could worsen when she was 8 years old and above. For that the doctor advised Jinggu to operate on his sister as soon as possible. Actually Jinggu wants to operate Jingtong but the money needed is not small. Besides that, Jinggu only works daily by opening a cell phone repair business that doesn't earn much, but Jinggu's experience is only repairing electronic goods, and has been doing it for years. Jinggu also often repairs the TV at the nursing home near his home. This orphanage is managed and run by Mr. Liang and his wife who work as employees there. After picking up the Jingtong, they saw a notice to pay the rent of the apartment. Jinggu has been in arrears for a month. That night he got a call from a friend named Zilong. His friend worked in a warehouse. Zilong's intention of calling Jinggu was to show a mountain of piles of used cell phones. According to Zilong, all these cell phones were left by an import-export businessman who is currently in prison. Because he still owed the warehouse rent for 2 years, they confiscated his goods. This warehouse is planning to vacate, so Zilong offers Jinggu to pick up all of these phones for 100,000 yuan. Zilong believes in Jinggu's hands. This phone can be repaired and resold, so that Jinggu can make a profit from it. When he got home from there, Jinggu immediately checked the quality test file from the cell phone, which on average did not pass the feasibility test. Jinggu tries to fix it with years of experience fixing broken phones. Plus adequate equipment and skills, the cell phone was successfully turned on. Realizing he could justify the phone, the decision was immediately made. To buy all the phones, Jinggu applied for a loan by pledging all the contents of the shop. The next day, he went to an electronics sales center to offer his product. While offering, he idly calculates the profit earned by his estimated profit of 900,000 yuan. A very large number which is not only enough to operate on his younger brother, he can also improve his standard of living and improve his business. But unfortunately, 2 weeks later, the government even issued a new trade policy. That recycled mobile phones are prohibited from being marketed. Cell phones that are already in circulation will be confiscated, and the seller will be arrested. Of course this policy was detrimental to Jinggu who had just started his business. Jinggu has only been able to sell a few units, while in the cell phone warehouse there are still many. He also had to think hard. Jinggu went to the big phone manufacturer that Jinggu bought. He met a manager named Livand. Jinggu offered spare parts for the phone he was recovering. Because there is a big market in the international market and this business will become an industrial chain, Jinggu said. Livand refused, because it was judged that Jinggu would not pass the quality test. Jinggu insisted that his spare parts would pass the test. Livand half-heartedly agreed with Jinggu's words. So at this time what Jinggu will do is disassemble all components of used cell phones, then make sure all components can function properly, including LCDs, cameras, even small components such as capacitors, resistors, and so on. Jinggu didn't go to college, but with perseverance and patience he was sure he could do it. He didn't want his past to determine his future. Besides that he had to make a manual for disassembling that type of cell phone, because once that was all done, he could recruit people to work with him. Day after day passed with hard work, dissecting the large to the smallest components. Of course it is not easy and requires extra patience, but with perseverance, Jinggu finally finished working on it complete with the guidebook. Quality testing of spare parts was also carried out. The result was that the spare parts passed the feasibility test. The first step was successful. He then immediately went to meet Livand who happened to be welcoming the president-director named Mr. Zhao. Jinggu notifies that the parts have passed the eligibility, and reminds yesterday's agreement, that if Jinggu passes the due diligence, Livand will buy the parts. But Livand says he never said that, and tells Jinggu to stop bothering him. Plus Livand doubted Jinggu, because he was only 20 years old. Not discouraged, Jinggu waited for Mr. Zhao, the president-director. Jinggu offered Mr. Zhao the same proposal and asked for 10 minutes to explain. Mr. Zhao says that he is in a hurry to catch the train, and will be back in a month. Not giving up, Jingu decided to chase Mr. Zhao to the train station, even though the train was about to leave in 30 minutes. So Jingu catches up with the time as best he can, speeding on his scooter, taking shortcuts to the station until an accident occurs. Not caring about his injuries, he left the scooter that wouldn't start. Zhang ran to the station until he was hit by a car for crossing carelessly. Luckily Jingu was able to come on time and asked Mr. Zhao for 10 minutes. After listening to Jingu's presentation, Mr. Zhao said that Jingu will not be able to repair all parts of the phone. Jingu asked, if he could, would Mr. Zhao want to buy it? Mr. Zhao agrees, but he won't give a down payment. He told Jingu to take care of the demolition himself. Even Mr. Zhao would not provide factories or workers. And if the parts fail the quality test, Mr. Zhao will also not give money, and no matter how much Jingu is spent on it. Mr. Zhao asks Jingu to call Livan when he is ready. Of course this deal is very risky. If successful he will indeed become a millionaire. But if he fails he will be a loser. Because his motorbike broke down, Jingu had to walk from the station to pick up his sister and was late. Luckily there was a good school custodian, who happened to live there. Saw his brother who was injured, Jingtong, crying and sad. Jingu's work is getting more and more. He has to work during the day to earn money to keep his factory running. He then asked Mr. Liang's help to oversee the factory. At first Mr. Liang refused, and told Jingu to play it safe rather than fail. But because of Jingu's reason that he needed a lot of money for his sister's surgery, Mr. Liang's heart softened and was willing to help. If the project is successful, Jingu will get 800,000 yuan within 4 months. Meanwhile, because he could not pay his loan debt, Jingu had to give up all the goods in his place of business confiscated. Even his only motorbike had to be sold to get extra money. Then he went to meet his friend named Mayu to get a job. After begging, Mayu allows Jingu to work there as a window cleaner for a skyscraper. One day Jingu and Mr. Liang went to find a place for their factory. And got a dusty warehouse. Jingu agreed to rent 3,000 yuan per month. Together with Mr. Liang they also prepared the factory so that it could be used for work. Raw materials have been moved from the warehouse. All that's left are the workers. In China there are lots of people queuing for work, but according to the labor agency, no one wants to work for a small salary plus the bonus they receive when the project is completed. And if anything, they are unemployed. So he recommended several people. The first, Wang Kunmei, he used to work in an electronics factory. Unfortunately due to an accident he can't hear well. Currently he works part-time. While teaching this woman, Jingu had to scream. The second is Zhang Wanghao. He used to be a manager at a company, but because of beating someone up, he ended up in prison. Next there is a man who eats his sleep in the cafe, and is busy playing games. Now he has repented and wants to find a job because he wants to marry a woman. Her name is Hengxi. He then begged Jingu to invite his friend Lu. Something unexpected happened. At that time Mr. Liang brought some residents of the nursing home who said he wanted to help Jingu when they heard Jingu set up a factory. Although they are decrepit but their work experience can be used. Long story short, Jingu's electronic component factory will also operate with these workers. As planned, to help with the operation of his factory, Jingu had to work during the day to earn extra money. He worked as a skyscraper glass cleaner. Of course, it also carries a great risk. Lives are at stake. While his sister's condition still hasn't improved, she has to take the same medicine every day. All Jingu could do was comfort his little brother so he wouldn't be sad anymore. Jingu said, as long as we work hard nothing is impossible. One afternoon at the factory, Jingu came a man. He offered Jingu to sell his cell phone, to take metal from the components that they can sell again. Of course Jingu refused, because it's illegal. That person should leave empty-handed. Another day, Lu was angry at Jingu because his salary was cut, the reason being that he worked less than last month. Actually he's been absent for 5 days without notice. Lu even got angry and insulted the hot factory conditions, no air conditioning and so on. Finally he decided to quit his job. A week later, Hengxi managed to marry the woman of his dreams. All the factory workers were there to celebrate. Even Jingu was trusted to offer wedding congratulations. On that occasion Lu was also present at the dining table. He apologized to Jingu for his mistake at that time. They hung out again and Lu begged to return to work there. Of course Jingu accepted it. After returning from the wedding, unfortunate for Jingu, the owner has changed the door lock. Jingu had to pay arrears for 3 months to pick up his things, and then they had to move from there. Since he had nowhere to go that night, Jingu had to ask Mr. Liang's wife for help so that Jingtong could sleep there. Because they couldn't sleep in the nursing home all the time, they moved to the factory to live there. Couldn't bear to actually let Jingtong sleep there. The bedroom was delimited using a pile of boxes. This is the toughest ordeal for Jingu. How not? His sick sister should be able to rest in a comfortable bed, but because of this situation, her sister must sleep in the factory. Because of his sister, Jingu couldn't stop and gave up. A very sick sister who must be healed at no small cost. Because of that, Jingu worked harder. During the day he still works as a skyscraper glass cleaner. At night, he is willing to stay up late to work on the production deficit, so he only has a little sleep. One night during recess, Jingtong woke up Jingu because there was a noise outside. Jingu was shocked to find the young man who yesterday was stealing his used cell phone. When they saw Jingu they immediately ran away, but Jingu didn't want to just let go of his stuff. Jingu chased after him until an accident occurred. Because of the accident, Jingu's finger was broken. Worried about her brother's condition, Jingtong ran after even wearing only one sandal. One trial has not yet been completed, yet another trial has come for them. Jingu was treated at the hospital so that his finger bones were saved, while the young man and his partner were arrested by the police. Luckily the stolen goods were found. On another day, Jingu was scolded by Mayu because she dropped the equipment while working. He was told to take off his gloves, and it made Mayu emotional to see the condition of his hands. Mayu was angry because Jingu didn't follow the rules, was forbidden to work if he was physically sick or injured. Because of that, Jingu was fired and given a salary according to his working day. Jingu had to think again, how did he get the money to pay the factory rent? Sure enough, one day, he was called by the owner of the place because he was already 2 months in arrears on his rent. Jingu asked for a rent waiver, as he was currently having a hard time, but the owner didn't care, and asked Jingu to pay off the arrears or leave. One day in a storm and heavy rain, Jingu was desperate and intercepted Liven's car. In the car Jingu begged him to lend 100,000 yuan because he was really in trouble. Here Liven refuses. Liven tells Jingu to solve the problem himself. In the midst of a storm, Jingu had to pick up his sister at school, but since it was impossible to get home, the school guard told them to stay the night. Jingu really didn't know what to do. She only remembers her promise to her mother before she died, to take good care of Jingtong. The next day when he returned to the factory, the roof where he kept his used cell phone collapsed due to the storm. Plus the landowner said that in 3 days Jingu had to clean up his things, because the factory would be rented out to someone else. Jingu was desperate. When his friends came, Jingu also had to give this bad news. Even though 2 weeks later the delivery will be made. But he can't pay their salary anymore, plus the factory will be rented out to someone else and in 3 days they have to move. Unexpectedly, the response of his friends was even surprising. They were willing to pay their salaries after the work was finished. Moreover, they say that they can take this job home. They can even ask their friends for help. They ask Jingu not to face this alone, because they also feel that they are part of this factory. Of course the burden that had been piling up on Jingu's shoulders slowly disappeared, because of the solidarity of his friends. With the help of Henzi's wife who is a heavy equipment operator, they quickly evacuated the remaining cell phones. They then haul all their belongings to be moved from the factory where they first started. In a short time, the work was done in each other's homes. Jingu and Jingtong temporarily live and work in a nursing home. Production continued until before delivery. One night Jingtong woke up from her sleep. She thanked Jingu for working hard to take care of her. The day of delivery arrives, the components that have been disassembled are finally sent for quality testing. And time passed. Long story short, Jingu and his friends were called to the electronics office to meet with Mr. Zhao. Their hearts pounded about the results of their component quality test. Jingu was told to sit down. Mr. Zhao first of all appreciated his hard work so he could finish the order on time. Secondly, its components pass quality tests with a quality rate of 87%. It didn't stop there. Mr. Zhao even wanted to keep working with Jingu. He wanted to make a 2-year contract with a project worth 5 million yuan. Jingu's sacrifices have not been in vain. The blood and tears of joy and sorrow that they have gone through are now paid off. Jingu then went to pick up Jingtong, and no words were spoken, only smiles and tears fell. A year later, Jingtong's surgery was a success, and she was able to grow normally and healthy. 6 years later, Jingu became the electronics CEO of Mr. Zhao's electronics subsidiary. Jingu was introduced to the public as the youngest CEO, and the film ended. Something always seems impossible until it is done. Keep working hard because as long as we move, nothing is impossible. Sometimes life does go beyond reason, but keep fighting because usually the greatest potential will come out when we face pressure. For those of you who are currently struggling, believe me, we will be the ones who can make miracles in our lives. Keep dreaming, because those dreams will lead us to achieve them. Never get tired of being a good person.